kinds were flying, lots of homemade signs, but Sarah could also see plenty of bigger, generic flags and placards from a whole range of green, environmentalist causes. There seemed to be a lot of strangers. Some banners even had London addresses on them. But there were plenty of familiar faces in the crowd. There was Grace from work, Pete Bull, her plumber, the vicar, Pravir, her father's friend, Hope Brown, the Butterworths. She even wondered if Jack might be here. But he'd been pretty adamant. "Right there with you in the cause, Sarah, but I've done my time on protests, on both sides of the lines." Well, he was missing something here. She'd never known the people of Cherringham to be so up in arms and united. And not surprising. The idea of a massive supermarket being built right on the edge of the village, on the site of the old lost village of Ingleston, was just completely crazy. The planning application from the enormous Zakro Corporation was coming up tonight for debate at the parish council meeting, and the village had turned out in force to register its horror at the prospect. Unanimous, it seemed. But when Sarah turned the corner of the village hall, she realised she'd been completely wrong about that, because there, ahead of them, was a counter-demonstration, a smaller crowd, but one that was just as vocal as the protesters. In front of them she could see Alan Rivers, the local cop, doing his best to keep the two sides apart with portable barriers and traffic cones. But he was clearly going to need reinforcements as the night wore on. Sarah sensed that the mood on this side of the hall was darker. Here, too, she could see faces she recognised, but there was an intensity, an energy to this crowd that felt threatening. There were no green banners, no printed logos, just hand-painted slogans. Jobs for locals, stop rip-off prices, real people need a fair deal. "Come on, love," said Sarah, now worried, and seeing the gap between the two sides as a way through to the hall. "Let's get inside." "Alan, we've got seats saved for us," she called. She saw Alan pull open the barrier and beckon. "Quick now," he shouted above the din of the chanting, Alan's voice tense, his eyes darting all around. Something like this, all new to him. She grabbed Chloe's hand and pulled her past Cherringham's lone policeman. "You watch out tonight, Sarah," he said as he pulled the barrier closed behind them. "And you," said Sarah. "Surely you're not on your own?" "Got a couple of vans coming from Oxford," he said. "And not before time. Now go on, get in there." Sarah nodded and headed for the village hall entrance, where she could see two of the parish councillors standing unofficial guard. "Tony Standish has some seats for us," she said. The name of her friend, the local solicitor and parish clerk, worked the usual wonders, and the doors opened. Inside, she caught her breath and watched as the doors closed. It was quiet in here, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. She looked at her daughter. Chloe's face looked flushed, but now with anxiety as much as excitement. Outside, something Chloe had never seen before either. "I don't get it, Mum," said Chloe. "I thought everybody wanted the same thing." "So did I," said Sarah. "I should have listened to my own advice, huh? Well, crowds can be unpredictable." "Exactly. Come on, let's find our seats." And she headed up the grand stairs of the Victorian Village Hall, to the theatre space that once a month became the focus of village democracy during the regular meeting of Cherringham Parish Council. Sarah had been to these meetings before in her role as editor of the village online newsletter. Most months they were predictable and predictably boring. A list of low-level issues to be endured, reports from subcommittees, plans for next year's carnival. 2 long hours to be suffered through with barely a voice raised. But tonight she had a feeling things were going to be very different. Chapter 2. Democracy in Action. And that concludes the update from the Transport Working Group. Mr. Chairman, could I just remind councillors that volunteers for the Speedwatch survey are still required? No remuneration, of course, but a worthy cause, and part of our long-term aim to make Cherringham's roads safe for all. Sarah watched Arthur Bassett remove his glasses fold his notes and sit down. By day, Arthur was a funeral director. Once a month he was transformed into chair of Cherringham's Transport Subcommittee. "Thank you, Mr. Bassett," said Ken Wickingham, owner of the newspaper shop on the High Street and this year's chairman. "Next item on the agenda, correspondence and the clerk's report." Sarah sat back in the gallery of the hall and ticked off transport on the agenda that had been handed to her when she and Chloe took their seats. That had been an hour ago, and they were still only halfway through the agenda items. She looked around. The gallery area was packed, as was the main body of the hall. The members of the council sat at a long table that had been set up in front of the stage, each of them behind a microphone. Amongst them, apart from Arthur and Ken, she recognised Adrian Sloane, who ran one of the biggest building companies in the area, and Tony Standish, who had been parish clerk for some years. Most of the others she knew as familiar faces from the shops or school events or Huffington's tea rooms. A while back, she'd known most of the parish council personally, but there'd been rather a scandal over a twinning exercise with a French town, and afterwards nearly all of the council had resigned. She and Jack had been responsible for bringing one or two councillors to justice, one of their early cases. She turned to Chloe next to her. "Poor kid must be getting so bored." "Don't worry, Chloe," she whispered. "This stuff will be over soon and we'll get on to the supermarket." "Are you kidding, Mum?" said Chloe, leaning close. "This is amazing. I never knew all these things got decided here." Sarah smiled in surprise, and once again thought how little she knew her daughter, who was growing up so fast. As the chairman talked through the month's correspondence, Sarah drifted off into a reverie of recalled family moments, holidays with both her kids, school sports days, barbecues. Then a ripple of applause and a couple of shouts from the gallery. She tuned back in to the chairman, who leaned into the microphone. "Which brings us to the only item on the planning agenda this month, the application by Zakro Corporation to build a retail development on 5-acre field, comprising a sales area of 40,000 square feet and associated landscaping, roadways, and further affiliated developments, including social housing." As the chairman spoke, Sarah saw an impeccably dressed woman step forward from the front row and walk over to a lectern that stood at the side of the councillor's table. She carried a laptop and a folder which, even from here, Sarah could see had the famous Zakro logo. "Now, we have with us tonight Ms. Eva Weiss, who has come here from the Zakro head office to talk through the application with the council, and I'm sure at the end of the meeting she will be available for comments and questions." There was a bubble of chatter from the audience and one or two indistinct comments, which Sarah could tell weren't complimentary. Sarah watched the Zakro representative wait at the lectern until the room fell silent again. The woman had a groomed look that Sarah knew took a lot of time and money to perfect. Classic Brussels politico chic, she thought. Spend €1,000 on the outfit, but make sure the brand is anonymous. Eva Weiss opened her folder and stared calmly at the room. "Mr. Chairman, councillors, thank you. And people of Cherringham, thank you for the warm welcome you have extended to me." "You ain't seen half of it," came a voice from the crowd, and Sarah saw a ripple of laughter run around the hall. Eva Weiss smiled and waited for silence again, and then began to speak. "The Zakro Corporation owns and runs over 10,000 supermarkets across the European mainland. We offer consumers consistently low prices, and we promise our workforce a regular wage that usually exceeds local hourly rates. Our building construction is low impact, and we comply with all social directives in our target locations." Someone from the back snorted, "Target location, that what we are?" The Zakro rep paused again. One cool customer. "The new exciting Cherringham superstore will be no different. It will revolutionize the Cotswold retail experience. And now I will show you some slides, please." Sarah watched as Eva stepped away from the lectern and a young man with a laptop at the hall's media desk, presumably her assistant, lowered the lights and started a slideshow. God, not a PowerPoint presentation.